Okay, we're back.
Hi.
Andrew Marsh,
Good morning.
the deathcore all-star band, My Art is Murder. How are you, dude? Thank you for being here.
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this. And thanks to everyone for tuning in and donating.
What time is it in Australia? Sorry, that I have to throw you on
9:20 in the morning.
Okay, so
which means it's 4:20 in LA.
Oh, there you go. The guy who doesn't smoke weed, but
No,
yeah, 9:21 a.m. Band time might as well be 5 a.m. So for all those working class listeners, this is pretty fucking early to get a dude up. So I appreciate you coming on. Yeah, I've had quite a day. There's a lot to talk about.
I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. To catch me up with what's going on with you guys, and I'm sure you tuned in with Josh's bit yesterday. So we covered a lot about some of the history in Australia, but I'd love to talk to you about what's going on currently and what's going on with you guys. So where are the Thy Art guys at right now? Like what's going on in your world in Australia?
Yeah, I've been popping in and out the last 24 hours since the stream's been going on. A lot of cool stuff. The band is inactive, for better or worse, at the moment. I haven't spoken to anyone. I spoke to Diz like a week ago. We've been texting, but that's about it. And Jesse, but everyone's just at home doing their thing. Kevin's probably lifting weights. CJ's probably pulling his hair out.
Yep. Well, CJ's busy with his kid. I'm happy to see CJ get some dad time right now, which is awesome.
I mean, at this point, we've been off for 3 months and 3 days, which is the longest time that we've had off in about 10 years.
The Thy Art and Fit tour played one of the last shows in America.
Yeah. The governor of Pennsylvania or the mayor of Philly basically shut down the city at 5 p.m. at his statement at close of business on the 13th of March, I think it was. Whenever that show was, I think it was the 13th. And we just did the show. We're like, there's no way they're going to come and find us tonight. They got big fish to fry. We did the show, and that night was the end of it all. We got flight out the next day, and we landed in Australia on the Sunday. And at Sunday night, midnight, Australia announced a international travel ban. And it's still in place. You can only enter and leave the country for repatriation purposes.
Wow. So nobody's visiting a beach in Australia anytime soon. Well,
no,
yeah, it was a bit. I mean, it was a big hit for all of us. That was day one of a tour. I had 20 something band dudes and crew at the studio scrambling to get the hell home before the world shut down. It was hectic, but everybody, thanks to your organizational skills, everybody made it home in time, beat the cuts.
Everyone made it home except for Neil, who got in a fight at San Francisco airport, and then the flight just didn't take off.
God, poor guy. Crazy stuff.
Yeah,
so
there was some crazy stuff happening, and he stood up for someone, I guess, and then the fight broke out, and then the plane didn't go. So he had to lock down for 2 weeks.
Bummer. Yeah, well, you got to stand up for what you believe in. That's what this is about. So here we are. So what's going on in Australia right now? Like, what are you seeing? I mean, you spend your second home is America. You spend a good amount of time here, and then you're back and forth. So you have a pretty good perspective on how the two continents and our countries are handling, these events differently. And I'd love to hear a little bit of insight from you about that.
Yeah, I guess I have a unique perspective that I spend my time equally between the countries, except for the last 3 months where I've been stuck here. Australia kind of does follow a lot of other Western political kind of movements pretty closely. And our own Prime Minister criticised protesters this week, saying this is an imported issue into Australia.
Issue. Wow.
Which is crazy because Australia commits human rights violations against refugees seeking entry into Australia. It's absolutely bananas. So to say it's an imported issue, we generally protect our borders from any imported issues, literally. But the protesting has been really encouraging in Australia. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people turned out. The central business districts, the downtown areas have been like kind of locked down, not locked down, but no traffic could get through. There was so much protest, which is really encouraging to see. And really what this issue, beginning, I guess, with George Floyd in Minneapolis, has sort of served as a catalyst for Australians to go, hang on a minute, we've got our own issues. They're all doing something about it. Maybe we should do something about it. And so maybe the motivation has been imported through the airwaves, but people seem to be up in arms for the first time in a very long time here and doing something about it, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the Melbourne protests were like some of the biggest in the world, which was surprising. Yeah, there's crazy. The embedded like racial issues in Australia are out of control. And like, if for anyone who's listening, if you want a little insight to that, just go, when we air this, go back to day one and listen to Josh Smith's because man, he laid it out in a
very hard, man, and a lot of good facts there. You know, there's nothing can be disputed. It's not one person's perspective. That is what happened. You know? And Australia has sort of acknowledged it, its existence, but still refuses for liability reasons or for whatever to formally acknowledge and you know, make reparations. This week alone or last week, we've had ancient Indigenous Australian sites. I don't know if you've heard about this in the States, been destroyed by a mining company in Western Australia. And these are some of the oldest sites for, you know, like burial grounds, like cave systems with art and whatnot, over 20,000 years old. And they said they intend to destroy another 20 sites in the next 6 months.
Wow. And that's a mining company?
That's a mining company, yeah.
So I'm taking your protected land, you know, the laws that are in place aren't really protecting any of these communities from their
No, they seem to be able to just kind of sweep it under the rug because of the lobbying power of these companies to push things through and kind of sweep them under the rugs. We've also got some kind of spy guy, actually. There's a national secrecy prosecution going on right now for a guy who basically has exposed like some illegal activity of the Australian government spying on East Timor, trying to negotiate better deals, and they're housing a lot of refugees off the coast of Australia. And this whistleblower's kind of come up and the government's gone, let's shut this up. No press is allowed. And we're going to keep this one pretty quiet.
Wow. Wild stuff, man. It's funny because the people I encounter in Australia, I mean, everybody in our community seems to be so, you know, Australia is like an extremely accepting community. And I felt like, you know, I've lived there for months at this point with all the records I've made over there and stuff. And I've never encountered racism in Australia. And in my mind, and we had the same conversation with Canada, how we always have these talks like, oh, Canada's nice. If Trump's elected, I'm going to move to Canada. Like, and there's this perception of we build up these perceptions of these places in our mind that this is paradise and everything's better there, but it's fucking not, you know? And it's like you and Josh going on here being like, oh no, they're destroying this, all these people, there's all this, here's a bunch of genocide, here's this. And it's like, it is all the global scale of racial injustices like coming to light recently with all of this, with other countries sort of going up in arms and protesting as a reaction to what's happening in America, which was clearly long overdue in places like Australia. It's like alarming, and I'm still processing all of it. Like I'm doing this thing, and then last night I'm like reading about like Aboriginal atrocities and stuff in Australia, like at 1 a.m. and I'm like, this is fucked. Like I can't even take this in right now. You know?
Yeah, it's real bad.
What has like, you know, and this is a good question I've asked to, you know, people from other countries and stuff, like what approaches in your history have ever enacted change? And I'm looking for like jumping off points for people, you know, for Americans and, you know, the people that are protesting here or the people that are trying to enact policy change here. What's like ever worked in Australia, you know, like, because this is an issue that clearly you know, there's these massive protests. People are fed up with it, but at some point in your history, the needle must have moved a little bit. Like what's actually happened, you know?
I have no idea what's worked on a national level. It generally kind of comes back to local communities and people that, you know, I guess to get a little bit religious, know thy neighbor or love thy neighbor. And And so you have these people that are sort of a little bit ignorant and fearful, particularly in at least in my experience, moving to Australia in the late 90s. I went to a rural community, and they didn't realize I was the brownest bloke there. So, they just had limited exposure. Where you look at Melbourne Central Business District, it's very multicultural. And I mean, at least personally, in my experience, food has been a great avenue for getting to know your neighbor or your people from different cultural backgrounds. And we see in metropolises like this that it is a great avenue to know other people. And I think at that grassroots level, that exposure, level of comfort, and literally being nurtured or sustained through the food of another person can break down barriers of cultural differences and help people understand and appreciate other folks.
Sure.
I saw a show recently, a Palestinian woman cooking in the States, and she thought, if I can get white folks to like this food, maybe they'll stop thinking that my brothers and sisters are terrorists.
Wow. That's
and
crazy.
I thought
it's unfortunate because it shouldn't be the job of a Middle Eastern woman or a black person in America to convince someone else that they're not a bad person, and it's sad to see that, their struggles reach that level of desperation where they have to bribe us into thinking that they're good people. And that,
but I don't know. I think that sort of grassroots work is really what is pushing the changes slowly over time. I mean, over politicizing things, it definitely helps to set policies and laws that are in place to protect folks. But if it's not happening with the people, then it's very tough to tell people do this. You get a bunch of racist people together and go, don't hate black people, don't hate Asian people. They're just not going to do it, But these slow kind of burn things, in my experience, really have done a lot.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed about Australia when I was there is communities in Australia almost purposely self-segregate themselves to build better communities. I mean, if you go out by Byron and Mullumbimby and stuff, it's like I wouldn't call them hippie communes, but I mean, people have it's like communities have migrated to areas where they're like, we're going to try to have our own community that, is more free and equal to people of all races and colors and genders. And I see I'll call it self-segregation where people choose to do that. And there's a lot of that up and down the coast. And I think, when I was there, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. This is a positive thing. But then I'm like, it's also running away from
isolation.
Yeah. And I think, when I spent time there, I'm like, all of these people after a while, I'm like, these people live in a bubble and they're going to get a false narrative of what the rest of the world is like out there. And it's a form of complacency where I was like, this is a beautiful place, but I can never live here because I feel like I would lose perspective on what's going on in the rest of the world. Because then when you go out, you no longer have an understanding of how the real world really works, and you haven't done your part in whatsoever in any way to enact positive change and try to solve problems in the other world. So it's like, yeah, it's just something I've noticed in Australia, and it's
definitely it's kind of like that echo chamber or echo bubble that people talk about with social media now, where algorithms are filtering your exposure to things that you maybe don't like or don't respond well to or don't interact with, and manifesting that in your actual physical life probably isn't super ideal either.
Sure. I mean, the notion sounds nice until you realize the damage you're actually doing to
for better or worse. I mean, it sounds wonderful to go to a place where all your best friends are and that's all you deal with, but real life is dealing with difficult things, as the world is dealing with a few difficult things now. And if you live in a sheltered little bubble, even down to developing an effective immune system, as we've seen with certain isolated cultures around the world.
Sure. I'm happy that most of the people, at least in my community, are breaking out of their bubbles right now and trying to do their parts. So, hey, we could talk all day because I love talking to you, but we don't have a ton of time. I'm moving people along fast, but it was nice to catch up and hear some perspective on Australia. Is there anything else that you'd want to add while you have this platform just to talk about what's going on?
Not too much that hasn't already been said. I'd like to thank all the people that are donating, tuning in, opening their minds. I think, I don't have the most to say, and I'm certainly not the most educated person on these sorts of human rights movements, and I've kind of tossed around with it, like, what should I do? But I think at this point, literally anything that you can do is great at a local level. And if you don't know what to do, cough up a few bucks and give it to people that do know what they're doing, and help support the cause.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what this is. I don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing. I'm just trying. So, but I definitely, I think I've determined that my skill set here is an organizer. So I will use my organizational skills to put together the right voices and the right people to generate money to go to the right people and support the Black Lives Matter movement. And you're a small part of that. Coming on here, donating something awesome, which I will pull up right now. This is Andy Marsh's old stage guitar, which is a very cool Ibanez RG. I'm not going to say all the letters because
no, I don't know Ibanez the letters
robot language. But if you play Ibanez's and you're an RG fan, you probably know what this is.
Upgraded with 81.7 pickups.
Yep, EMG pickups are a bonus. It's a player's guitar. It's really workhorse instrument. I know you guys have used Ibanez's for years. Fitz used them for years. These guitars hold up. You can take it around the world, throw it around. It works through airports. If you're in a band and you play our deathcore bullshit, this is a good axe for that. So, Andy, thank you so much.
$10. Get the guitar.
$10. Say you want this guitar, and if we randomly pick you and you win this, I guess I'll send it to you because it's at my studio now. So that's my job. So, but thank you for parting with this one. This is a very cool giveaway, and always appreciate you and our conversations. And we'll talk soon, man.
Likewise.
Cool.
Goodbye, everyone.
Andy Marsh signing off. Okay, we're coming down to our last guest. We've had a nice day. A lot of conversations. Give me 2 minutes and I'll be back with Brian from Knock Loose.